Hello everyone, welcome to the Adkup Show. Today we are stepping into a time machine and heading straight to the late 1920s, a decade of jazz, flappers, and wild economic dreams that ended in one of the biggest financial nightmares ever, the Great Depression. Imagine this: breadlines snacking through city streets, families losing everything, and a quarter of the workforce with no jobs. What sparked this chaos, and how did a single law with a catchy name, Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, take a bad situation and make it a global catastrophe? We are about to unpack it all with some jaw-dropping facts and figures from the era that'll make you see a Roaring Twenties in a whole new light. So without wasting time, let's get started. Let's set the stage. It's the 1920s and America is riding high. The Great War is over, the economy is booming, and optimism is through the roof. Nowhere is this clearer than the stock market. Picture this. In 1920, the Dow Jones Industrial Average sits at a modest 63 points. By September 1929, it soared to 381 point, which was staggering 500% increase in less than a decade. People aren't just investing, they are gambling. Stockbrokers are celebrities, and regular folks like barbers, teachers, and even taxi drivers are borrowing cash to buy shares on margin. That means they are only putting down 10% and borrowing the rest, betting the market will keep climbing forever. But while Wall Street's throwing a party, the rest of America is not exactly invited. Take farmers for instance. After World War I, they ramped up production to feed Europe. Tractors and fertilizers boost yields, but by the mid-1920s, there's too much wheat, corn, and cotton. Prices tank. Wheat drops from $1.30 a bushel in 1926 to 30 cents by 1932. Farmers are drowning in debt, unable to sell their mountains of crops. Factories face the same problem. Assembly line churn out radios, cars, and refrigerators faster than people can buy them. Warehouses are bursting, and this overproduction is quietly setting the stage for disaster. Here's another red flag. Wealth isn't trickling down. By 1929, the top 1% of Americans control 23% of the nation's income, while the average worker's wages barely budged. The rich are building mansions and throwing champagne-soaked parties, but most folks can't afford the shiny new gadgets piling up in stores. This unequal distribution means consumer demand, which is the engine of the economy, is running on fumes. Then comes the spark that lights the fire. October 1929 rolls around, and the stock market is riding a wave of pure hype. But on October 24, which is also referred as Black Thursday, cracks started appearing. Stocks start slipping and panic creeps in. Brokers scramble, shouting over each other's as prices drop. By October 29, Black Tuesday, it's full-on collapse. The market loses $14 billion in a single day. That's about $230 billion in today's dollars. Investors watch their fortune evaporate, and Roaring Twenties roar right into a brick wall. Okay, so the stock market crashes, which was a big deal. But why does this turn into a decade-long depression? Let's follow the dominoes. First up, the banks. When stocks tank, people freak out and sprint to withdraw their savings. In just a few days, depositors pull out $1.5 billion. That's billion in 1929 money. But here's the wild part. There is no safety net. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation didn't exist until 1933. Banks had been playing fast and loose, investing in stocks or making risky loans. When the crash hits, they are caught flat-footed. Between 1929 and 1933, over 9,000 banks, that's about 1 in 5 across America, collapsed. Imagine waking up, rushing to the bank, and finding a closed sign and your life savings gone forever. Next domino was confidence collapse. Businesses lose money from the crash, so they cut back. Factories slow down, workers get laid off, and by 1933, unemployment hits a brutal 25%. That's 15 million Americans out of work. Families who can't pay rent, buy food, or keep the lights on. People stop spending and started hoarding whatever cash they have left. Retailers can't sell their goods, so they fire more people. It's a vicious cycle spinning out of control. Industrial production drops 46% between 1929 and 1932. Steel plants, auto factories, half of them just grind to a halt. You would think the Federal Reserve, which was and is the America's wizard, would step in, but that was not the case. They fumbled the ball big time. In the late 1920s, they raised interest rates to cool off shock speculations, which was fair enough. But after the crash, when the economy was grasping for air, they keep interest rates high and tighten credits. Borrowing became impossible, businesses can't expand, and money supply shrinks by a third. Historians still argue about this, but many says Fed's stinginess turned a recession into a depression. Now let's widen the lens. America was not alone in this mess. Europe was still limping from World War I, tangled in debts and reparations. Germany owed billions. Britain was struggling and the US was their biggest trading partner. But instead of helping, America was about to throw a wrench into the global machine with a law named after two guys you have probably never heard of, Smoot and Hawley. And this is where it all gets messy. Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, signed into law on June 17, 1930. It's named after Senator Red Smoot from Utah and Representative Willis Hawley from Oregon. They both were well-meaning politicians who thought they could save American farmers and factories. Their big idea was to slap massive tariffs on imported goods to make them pricier than American stuff. Over 20,000 products got hit, from French wine to German steel. Average tariffs on dutiable imports jumped from 25% to nearly 50%. A $1 Italian shirt now costs $1.50. The pitch was simple: protect American jobs and boost local sales. It all sounded very patriotic, but it badly backfired. The US imports nosedived from $4.4 billion in 1929 to $1.5 billion by 1933. A 66% drop. That's partly the depression, but Smoot-Hawley supercharges the decline. Foreign goods vanished from shelves. Other countries retaliated fast. Canada slapped tariff on 16 US products, everything from eggs to cars. Within 2 years, US exports to Canada get sliced in half. Britain, France, Germany, they all joined the tariff war, building walls around their economies. So who were the real losers? Well, they were American farmers. They were already struggling with overproduction, and now export markets slammed shut. U.S. exports crashed from $5.2 billion in 1929 to $1.6 billion by 1933. That's a 70% plunge. Wheat exports dropped 40%, cotton 60%. A bale of cotton worth $200 in 1929 fetches just $60 by 1932. Farmers can't pay their loans, banks foreclose, and rural America turns into a wasteland. In 1930, over 1,000 economists signed a petition begging President Herbert Hoover to veto this bill, warning it'll tank the economy. Hoover signed it anyways. The damage goes global. World trade volume collapses by 66% between 1929 and 1934. Germany can't export enough to pay its war debts. Britain's industries stall and whole planet feels the squeeze. Smoot-Hawley didn't just worsen the US depression, it dragged the world down with it. Timing is everything too. This hits right after the crash, when trade could have been a lifeline. Instead, it was a knockout punch. By the way, because of Smoot-Hawley Tariff Acts, Germany was not able to export its products to America, which led to economic chaos in Germany, which ultimately paved a way for Nazis to come in power. The same thing happened in Cuba. Cuba was a big producer and exporter of sugarcane to America. Now, after this act, Cuba was also unable to export their products. This led to economic chaos and ultimately paved the way for communists to come into power. Let's piece it all together. The Great Depression starts with a speculative stock bubble popping in October 1929. Overproduction, unequal wealth, bank failures, and clueless Federal Reserve turn a market crash into a full-blown crisis. Then Smoot-Hawley comes in, swinging a sledgehammer at global trade. Exports decline, retaliation spreads, and what could have been a rough patch becomes a decade of misery. By 1933, America's GDP has shrunk 30%, and the world was a mess. It's a masterclass in how interconnected economies are and how fast good intentions can backfire. Recovery didn't come until Franklin Roosevelt took office in 1933, rolling out the New Deals like job programs, bank reforms, and a pivot away from protectionism. Smoot-Hawley taught a lesson that trade wars don't fix depressions, they fuel them. It's crazy to think how a law which was meant to save America helped sink it instead. And that's a wild tale of 1922 and the tariff that turned a downturn into a disaster. So what do you think? Could we see another Smoot-Hawley movement today? Let me know in comments. Smash that like button if you enjoyed this dive and subscribe for more history unpackings. Thank you for watching. Stay curious and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.